We want to welcome Melodie O'Connell with us today. She's actually been here before. She was telling me 3 years ago we had her here. So we're really excited to have her here. I just met her today, so I'm going to do my best to introduce her. So she's been working for 24 years, experience with individuals, specifically with mental health and well-being. And she's actually works as she's a social worker, and she's a mental health advocate. So she's going to introduce a little bit more about what she does and who she is. But can we welcome her?
Thanks, everyone. As Andrew said, my name is Melodie O'Connell. I work for a family health team in Kitchener, and I've worked in the area of mental health for a long time. It's hard to believe. And I also actually do a private practice. I do a part-time private practice focusing on mental health, but also on chronic pain and the mind-body connection and how our brain can generate some of those signals as well. So when Pastor James reached out to me in December about this conference, I was excited about the opportunity to speak once again. And it wasn't until late January when I had the aha moment of, God, I know what you're doing here. I need to reflect on this for myself as well. My husband and I have 4 adult children, ages 18 to 25. We had them in swimming lessons, music lessons, soccer, and all 4 played rep hockey. We were that family that went from practice to practice, game to game, tournament to tournament. I loved so much about those years. I loved the friends that were made. I loved watching them excel. I loved watching them build their confidence, loved watching them win, and the resilience that came when they lost. And learning that they could cope with the difficulties of that, but it came at a cost. One thing I want to say at the outset of our time together, as you are aware, this is the busiest season of your life. And we just want to do it well. That's all we really want. We want to do it well. Our intentions are good. And I think that is why this topic is just so important today. We feel like we have one chance to get it right. I'm going to read a little story about the drive-through family. One evening, a father noticed something strange about his family. He was sitting in the driver's seat of the minivan in a parking lot, engine running. His daughter had just finished soccer practice. His son was in the back seat doing homework under the glow of a phone flashlight. His wife was in the passenger seat texting the next coach about tomorrow's schedule. Dinner, a bag of fast food passed through the window 5 minutes earlier. No table, no conversation, just wrappers and brushing. As they pull out of the parking lot, the father glanced at the clock and said, "Okay, we've got 18 minutes to get to piano." No one spoke. The van drove through the dark streets of like a shuttle bus moving between destinations. Practice, lessons, games, practices again. Later that night, after everyone was finally home and gone to bed, the father walked through the quiet house, sports bag by the door, instruments in the hallway, calendars covered in color-coded commitments. And suddenly he had a strange thought. We spent the entire evening together, but we were never actually together. No one had asked how anyone was doing. No one had laughed around the table. No one had really seen each other. They had become what he later called the drive-through family, always moving, always consuming the next activity, but never stopping long enough to connect. And the painful part of that is every activity had been chosen for a good reason, to help the kids succeed, to give them opportunities, to help them survive and thrive. But somewhere along the way, the family had accidentally scheduled everything except time to be a family. Most families today aren't intentionally choosing disconnection. We're choosing opportunities. We're choosing development. We're choosing what we believe is best for our children. But in a hurried culture, these good choices can quietly add up until our family life becomes a series of rides between commitments. Today we're going to talk about how overscheduling affects our children, our parents, and our emotional life of the family, and how we can reclaim that space for connection. I don't know if anyone's familiar with Gabor Mate. Has anyone heard that name before? He's written a lot of books. He's a trauma specialist. I've done some trainings with him. He is a guru. He was the one that talks, he's got a book I think called When the Body Says No, talks about the stress that is in our bodies and how we carry that. So he has a saying, not only are we in a hurry, but we are addicted to hurry. He uses this idea to show how our modern culture pushes busyness and productivity, and in the process we sacrifice what matters most. It can disconnect us from our feelings, our relationships, and even our bodies, which we'll talk a little bit about. We ask ourselves questions such as, what should I be doing? What should I be eating? And now we even look at our smartwatches to tell us whether or not we slept well. We have lost our intuitive sense about how we are feeling and how we are doing. We just keep pushing forward. How did we end up here? We seek validations from others. We have become extrinsically motivated. I think about Facebook. If it isn't posted, it didn't happen. I think about my friend and I, who every morning we send each other our Wordles, right? Am I seeking connection? Am I seeking validation? In some ways, it's just a harmless activity, but in other ways, it's actually robbing me of my quiet early morning routines. It's become another activity that's been squeezed into the early morning routine. We did it this morning once again, and I do it every day, and it's just our little way of saying hello, but it's also something that I'm trying to not be on my phone in the mornings. So, for many of us, we work 8 hours a day. We try and sleep 8 hours a day. And then outside of those 16 hours, we wear a lot of hats. It could be parent, provider, teacher, role model, coach, cheerleader, planner, chef, driver, and I'm sure the list can go on. Does that sound familiar? A little bit? Yeah. I recall a conversation I had with my husband's grandmother when my kids were quite young. She had 2 children that were 9 years apart, so that we're going back into the 50s. She stayed at home to raise the children and take care of the domestic responsibilities. I asked her how she did all of it, given that they didn't have the modern amenities that we now have. And she said to me, it's not like we actually interacted or engaged with our kids. We just put them in the playpen, prop them up with a bottle. It occurred to me in that moment that parents in this generation, we want to be able to work inside the home, outside the home, and be involved with our kids in all of their activities and just be as involved as possible. There's been a lot of shifts over the last 2 generations. So we're going to talk a little bit about those 2 or a few of those shifts. There's increased pressure for education and careers. We look for ways in our children to build leadership, to build discipline, help them to develop their unique talents in order to get ahead and set them apart. As a result, as parents, we spend more money, we spend more time on tutoring, music, and extracurriculars. Parents with young children feel the need to start early to give their kids an advantage. Activities are no longer a hobby, they are an investment. Number 2, safety concerns, fear. Fear for a number of things. Beginning in the 1980s and the 1990s, there was increased fears around kidnappings and stranger danger, and as a result, parents no longer felt as comfortable with unsupervised play. This resulted from the increase in media. It was no longer just the 6 p.m. news on the newspaper. We are now getting news all the time, 24/7. And not only that, the news is far-reaching. We're not just hearing about our local news, we're hearing about what happened to that family in Australia, what happened overseas. We're hearing all of that. And it creates a heightened sense of fear from a safety perspective. In addition, as our children have access to computers and cell phones, they too can be exposed to some of the threats. And as parents, we don't want them spending time on their devices. As a result, structured activities have replaced informal childhood play. Instead of riding bikes, playing pickup sports, or exploring outside, we tend to overschedule them to keep them out of trouble and reduce the risk of something bad happening to them. We also fear that our kids will miss out or fall behind. The other thing, increase in dual working parents or single parent families has created more of a demand for after school programs, sports, and activities because they provide supervision. And interestingly, after World War II, or during World War II, is when women started entering the workforce, which is what created the demand for childcare. And in that shift, what also happened is children's number one influence became their peers. It was no longer the parents, which is why there's this, I want to do more, my friend is doing this. We get a lot of that kind of conversations in our families. Social comparison and social media. We now see the success of other people's children, winning trophies, competitions, travel teams, elite training, impressive skills and achievements, and their vacations and their other experiences. So this tends to create a vision for what we might think a successful family looks like. It's created what we call a competitive parenting culture. I've heard so often, I don't want my children to miss out, or they are only this age once. I met up with a client a few weeks ago, and his son is 7. And he talked about his desire to ensure that his child has some great opportunities. He wants to be able to provide this for him and experience it with him, which I can totally appreciate. We all want that. He had also mentioned that in his childhood, they went to Florida once. Yet he described his childhood as amazing, and he never felt that he missed out. The other part of that too is I also hear more of this shift. Our family needs a vacation, right? Because we're so busy, because we're that drive-through family, we tend to kind of need that time away just to spend quality time together. I also wanted to just mention a story that we had with my son, my youngest son. He's 18 now, and I remember when all of his friends were doing power skating, all in preparation to make the rep team, right? And so Dylan said to me, I don't want to do power skating. And I remember as a parent, I didn't want him left behind. And so what ended up happening? He didn't do power skating. He got cut. He was okay with it. A little disappointed, but nonetheless, he had a good year. It was me. It was my fear of him getting left behind, or my fear of him being hurt and not being with his friends. But it's in that moment that I realized that's also where our greatest growth and resilience happens, is when things don't go well. It's also actually the greatest spot where God shows up and does his work as well, is when we've failed or lost or something along those lines. So sometimes we have to reflect, is it my fear and worry that my child's going to be hurt, or is it theirs? We often try to protect our kids from getting cut from a team, having to repeat a swimming lesson, failing a course. We want to do everything that we can to protect them from that. But that's where the resilience happens. That's where they grow, that's where they develop, and they also learn that they can cope when bad things happen. One of the things I think is really important when our child does experience that disappointment, we want to enter into that with them. In the hockey culture, many of you are probably familiar with what that might look like. It is a highly competitive parenting culture, more so than it should be, especially when our kids are playing local league or whatever it might be. But when a child gets cut, I've heard so many times, it's because you did this wrong. That's not what the child needs to hear. The child needs to hear, I'm so sorry you got cut. You must be hurt. Enter into it with them so that they know that you're a safe relationship and that they can just land and not have to justify or not feel shame. No fear or judgment. Children are a project. In earlier generations, childhood is viewed as a time to grow naturally and gradually. Today, childhood is often viewed as a development project where every stage they must build skills. Parents feel responsible for discovering talents early and intensely. The mindset turns from free time into something that feels wasted if not productive. How often have we heard that? Don't waste your time. Or how often have we said that? Don't waste your time. Our good friends, they have, he's a pastor in Brampton. When his daughter Leah was 3, I heard her sing, I think it was Twinkle Twinkle. Pitch perfect. And I was like, oh my gosh, you guys need to put her in singing lessons. And they're like, no, we don't need to do that. If she wants to sing, she'll sing. Well, she's graduated from university, she's released 2 albums, and she's in the music industry just doing a great job. But I think so often when we see those early talents, we're looking for those early talents. And part of that is because of the parenting culture that's been created. The big picture. 30 to 40 years ago, children had fewer organized activities, more unstructured play, and less parental scheduling or involvement. Today, our culture expects us to actively engineer their child's success, which puts a lot of pressure on both the parents and the children. The irony is, children today have more opportunities than ever and less free time than any generation previously in modern history. And we have lost all of the benefits that come with less parental involvement, such as critical thinking, problem solving, and taking initiative. How does this show up? It can show up 3 main ways: physically, emotionally, and behaviorally. So physically, as parents, I'm going to talk about parents specifically, maybe we start to notice we're getting a few more headaches. Maybe we start to notice the dentist has told us we're grinding our teeth at night. We're having some pain. Pain is starting to amplify. Maybe we have some IBS issues or nausea. Maybe it's our sleep. We're having difficulty falling asleep or staying asleep. We're restless. We're waking up early. Our minds are racing, thinking about what we need to do the following way or the things we need to remember to do when we wake up. And I just want to pause about sleep for a second. Prior to the year 2000, Canadians averaged 8 hours of sleep. In 2013, this has dropped to 7 hours of sleep. Insomnia rates have increased by 42% since 2007. Only 35% of Canadians get the recommended amount of sleep. Why is sleep so important? In the short term, it improves our physiological function from hormone and stress management, improves our cognition and our mood. In the long term, adequate sleep is imperative for cardiovascular disease prevention or heart health, diabetes prevention and management, reducing cognitive challenges such as mild cognitive impairment or dementia, or it reduces the risks of accidents and injuries. So sleep is very, very important, and it's one of the things that gets squeezed out in the busyness of our life. We also may notice lower energy, difficulty getting through the day, feeling tired or spent. How does it show up emotionally? Maybe we're a little bit more irritable or short-tempered. We're snapping at people. We're getting annoyed quite easily. We're feeling overwhelmed. Difficulty accomplishing regular responsibilities. Maybe we're feeling a little bit more anxious. Worrying about worst case scenario, always thinking about what next. When we think about stress and anxiety, a big part of that is worrying about what has happened or worrying about what could happen. We're caught in the future and the past. So a big part of what we're going to talk about today is how do we stay in the present, which Kelly had alluded to as well. Maybe our mood swings, we're going from calm to upset quite quickly. Maybe we're feeling dysregulated or unstable. Maybe we were just feeling flat. We just don't have any more energy in the tank. Behaviorally, maybe we're taking on too many tasks. Maybe we have difficulty resting, right? Can't sit still, can't sit down. Or we're feeling guilty when we take a rest, or filling every moment with activity. The needing to shut down, which may look like vegging out in front of the TV or scrolling on our phones just because we need some downtime. Maybe we're procrastinating. Maybe it's showing up in the way we eat. We're skipping meals, we're not hungry, or we're craving sugar or comfort foods or stress eating. Maybe we're canceling plans with our family and friends because we just need a night at home, right? Those signs can look similar in our kids and our teens as well. However, I'm going to add a couple more for our kids. Sometimes with our kids, what we're seeing is more anxiety, arguing more, being defensive, or rigidity about routines, perfectionism, strong reaction to changes in plans. So when we start to see kids responding in that way, it's because they feel this loss of control. I think the other thing that's really important to note, stress is often felt in the body long before we may even notice it. Our body is designed to cope with stress in the short term, but not in the long term. It gets a little bit louder until we start listening to it, until we start paying attention to it. That annoying back pain or whatever it might be, that might be a sign there's stress that we're just not paying attention to. We just keep forgetting about it. As I was thinking about this last night, I was thinking about the story of, you know, the man drowning in the ocean, and the boat comes along and says, I'm here to rescue you. And he's like, no, 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 God's going to rescue me. And then a ship comes along and he says, I'm here to rescue you. No, 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 God will rescue me. Helicopter comes. I'm here to rescue you. No, 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 God will rescue me. And then the man drowns and he shows up in heaven. And God is like, what are you doing? He said, well, I thought you were going to rescue me. He says, what do you think the boat, the ship, and the helicopter were? This is the same thing with our physiological symptoms. These are the signs that our body is in a heightened stress state. So we need to be able to pay attention to those early signs. How does it show up in our families? Maybe there's more conflict. Maybe there's more communication, or poor communication. People are talking less. Or more communication is done through text messages because we spend less time together. Dinners are rushed, or we're eating alone. Or telling our child, make sure you eat before so-and-so comes, picks you up, because we're not going to be there, right? Conversations can turn negative very quickly. Maybe there's emotional disconnection. There's less quality time together. There's reduced affection and warmth. Family members spending more time alone. Everyone is doing their own thing. We're feeling overwhelmed with daily routines and responsibilities. We're having difficulty with meals, getting them done together, or bedtime. Evenings feel rushed. Family meals rarely happen. Children are moving from one activity to another with little downtime. Household tasks piling up. Parents are feeling burned out. Family time squeezed out. and just generally less joy and less shared activities. We crave downtime when not in organized activities, and there's just less unstructured time together. Why do we want to be a slower family? Authentic connection starts within our home. One of the shifts that is becoming apparent in our fast-paced culture is there is a decrease in authentic connection. Sure, we are more connected with media, social media, texting throughout the day. However, the cost has been authentic connection. And one of those is that idea of shared experiences. Actually, I want to pause there for a second. I had a patient in my office this week, and she had just come from Giant Tiger across our parking lot. She was expressing her frustration with she didn't talk to anyone at the store because it's self-checkout, and then she'd just come to our location, and we've just gone to an automated check-in system, so there's no coming to the window. And she works from home, so there's so much isolation, right? And this is the environment in which our kids are growing up in. And so soon it'll feel like the only place that they get that authentic connection is within the home, right? So when families can interact and engage together without the constraints of time and authentically enjoy each other's company, the silliness, the laughter, and just being relaxed and enjoying time together. Our children and teens are craving and in need of that authentic connection. Friends and families to know them, understand them, and get excited for the things that they get excited for. They need undivided attention. When they get a goal in soccer, to look at the sideline and know that their parent is excited for them because they saw it. When they swim a whole length of the pool or jump off the board, to look up in the stands and see that mom and dad are joining in that experience with them and are excited with them and for them. All too common is a young parent in the grocery store and Walmart trying to get the groceries done, and the child is craving attention, having a little bit of an outburst, so the parent gives them a device to entertain them while they're doing their thing and trying to get all the chores done, right? As parents, we often become preoccupied in what we need to do because there's so little time. And as parents, we can become distracted by our devices. An important call, the need to get things done, that we're really missing these important moments. We are trying to squeeze in one more thing. I'm going to show you a quick video. I don't know if any of you have seen it. It's called the Still Face Experiment. And it's with an infant, but we'll talk a little bit about it. It's about just a couple of minutes. So it's an older video, but speaks volumes nonetheless.
Babies this young are extremely responsive to the emotions and the reactivity and the social interaction that they get from the world around them. This is something that we started studying 30, 40 years ago, when people didn't think that infants could engage in social interaction. In the still face experiment, what the mother did was she sits down and she's playing with her baby who's about a year of age.
I'm like a girl. Oh.
And she gives a greeting to the baby gives a greeting back to her.
Yeah.
This baby starts pointing at different places in the world, and the mother's trying to engage her and play with her. They're working to coordinate their emotions and their intentions, what they want to do in the world. And that's really what the baby is used to. And then we ask the mother to not respond to the baby. The baby very quickly picks up on this, and then she uses all of her abilities to try and get the mother back. She smiles at the mother. She points because she's used to the mother looking where she points. The baby puts both hands up in front of her and says, "What's happening here?" She makes that screechy sound at the mother, like, "Come on, why aren't we doing this?" Even in this 2 minutes, when they don't get the normal reaction, they react with negative emotions, they turn away, they feel the stress of it, they actually may lose control of their posture because of the stress that they're experiencing.
Okay. Oh, yes. Oh, what a big girl.
It's a little like the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good is that normal stuff that goes on, that we all do with our kids. The bad is when something bad happens, but the infant can overcome it. After all, when you stop the still face, the mother and the baby start to play again. The ugly is when you don't give the child any chance to get back to the good. There's no reparation, and they're stuck in that really ugly situation.
So I love that video for a number of reasons. It's funny, when I first saw that was long before smartphones. And so when I think about smartphones, how often are we now seeing our kids and even our teens? That's what they're getting from us. And then as adults, we're like, why is my teen just going into those shutdowns, right? That's kind of what we've taught. That's what we've created with the distraction, with not being able to be authentically connected with our kids. So, yeah, in a world full of busyness, distraction, multitasking, cramming, this is happening all the time without us realizing it or without any intention. And we often wonder, why are our kids feeling disconnected? In the war against the cult of speed, the front line is inside our heads because the culture in which we live, acceleration is the default. We live in a time of reaction instead of reflection as a result of too much data, information, and stimulation. To make the most of our time and avoid boredom, we have developed the need to fill up every day with mental stimulation or activities. Our minds can do amazing things in high gear, but shifting to a low gear can bring better health, inner calm, enhanced concentration, and the ability to think more creatively. Milan Kundera calls it the wisdom of slowness. One of the things that I think is so ironic is our desire as parents, the competitive parenting culture, is we're trying to do all these things to get our kids ahead, but really they're better health, inner calm, and able to concentrate and focus when we just slow it down. So we actually potentially can accomplish more by doing less. The wisdom of slowness. Okay, I don't know if any of you have ever seen this diagram before. I know it looks very busy, but I will unpack it for you because I think, yeah, it's, we use it a lot in the world of mental health, and it's quite a powerful diagram. In the middle of this diagram is the big yellow box. That's where we feel calm, cool, and collected. That is where we're able to self-soothe. That's where we're able to self-regulate, and that is where we want to be, right? And if you look at the green box on the left, things that cause us to go out of our window of tolerance. And I think thinking about this in terms of your children or in terms of relationships of any kind can be really, really helpful. But yeah, so what is it that causes us to get out of our window of tolerance? It can be fears, thoughts, maybe we're anxious, those bodily feelings, loss of control, feeling unsafe, feeling abandoned, I do not exist, those types of feelings, rejection. So what happens is we either go into a hyper aroused state or a fight or flight. I can think about one of my kids that really gets into that very, very quickly. We all might have one child in our family that's just a little bit more reactive than others and can get into that fight or flight very, very quickly. And that's where they look overwhelmed, emotional outbursts, anger, aggression, those types of things. Or the hypo-aroused going into the blue, they go into a freeze response or just kind of a shutdown, not present, they're unavailable, feeling disconnected, right? And the box on the right, the orange box, is how do we get back into the window of tolerance and how do we bring others back into the window of tolerance? Being mindful, being present, being in the here and now, grounding exercises, deep breathing, self-soothing, any of those types of things. When a child is distressed, what happens as a parent when we see them in the fight or flight response, we pick them up, we rock them, right? Our heartbeat will regulate their heartbeat. The rhythmic nature of our walking can help soothe them down as well. Emotional regulation is an important life skill, and in fact, it's probably one of the most important skills that we can ever model for them or teach them to do. We need it for almost every aspect of our lives. If we look around, we can see other people that have been emotionally dysregulated. As I shared earlier, My kids were in hockey. I saw it all the time. A lot of emotionally dysregulated parents or coaches. We can see it, road rage. We can read about it in the news. A lot of emotional dysregulation. I think the challenging part with this is quite often when someone else is emotionally dysregulated, it can trigger us. And really, if we can be mindful of, hey, let me be present, let me stay in my window of tolerance, then we can bring others into it as well. Quite often, especially if our children are having a hard time, we can get upset with them for that, when really we actually want to do the opposite. We want to be modeling and giving them a sense of safety. I'm sorry you feel that way. I'm sorry that toy was broken. What can I do to help you? That can help bring them back into that window of tolerance. When we catch ourselves out of it, I mean, it would be ideal if we could always be in our window of tolerance, but the reality is we can shift out of it, our kids shift out of it, and we want to bring ourselves back in. But when we catch ourselves outside of the window of tolerance, it's really important to reflect, what caused this? We want to use that one eye in, one eye out. What was going on around me? What was going on inside of me? When did I start to notice I was a little bit agitated? Is it because I didn't sleep well? Is it because of other things that aren't even in this moment? But trying to figure out what caused us to get triggered. I think so often we get so upset with ourselves. Why did I get so angry at my kids today? I feel so bad as a parent. We start to blame ourselves or feel some shame. But I think if we can be curious and have a little bit of grace and self-compassion, it'll go a long way. Any questions about that? We can ask any at the end if you like. One of my favorite slides of all time. Mindful or mindful? There's a man and a dog walking. The dog, he's in the presence of the sun and 4 trees, so that is what is in his mind. He's very mindful, he's very present. The man, his mind is full, but nothing to do with what he's doing in the moment. And quite often, as our culture is in this fast-paced culture, we're more often the man than we are the dog, right? So this is just a helpful image to try and figure out, how do we become more present? How do we become in the moment? Guy Clayton has a book called Hare Brain, Tortoise Mind, where he talks about fast thinking versus slow thinking. Fast thinking is rational, analytical, linear, or logical. It is what we do under pressure. It is the way computers think and the workplace operates. Delivers clear solutions to well-defined problems. Slow thinking, or a slower way of life, is intuitive. It is what we do when the pressure is off and we let the ideas simmer. It yields rich and subtle insights. Research shows that people think more creatively when they are calm, unhurried, and free from stress. We are more available to be present to our children and our teens. And there's actually been a lot of studies. There's some schools, I think in Norway and Scandinavia, where they're doing more of the slow thinking for teaching students. And they're actually having much better success rates as far as getting ready for university and doing some of those preparatory exams. So, in our culture, there is a push to do more and accomplish more. Our self-worth and identity is tied to what we do and not who we are. As parents, teachers, and coaches, we have a tendency to reward accomplishments and achievements. As a result, our kids want positive validation, and a vicious cycle results. I don't know if any of you have seen the YouTube video called The Greatest Valedictorian Speech Ever. It's a young man by the name of Kyle Martin from King's Academy in Florida. And he wanted to be valedictorian, and he was valedictorian, that's why his speech is on there. But he worked so hard. He was accomplishing things, the sports, the drama. He worked so hard to be valedictorian. And he shared that it felt great for the first 15 seconds. But then the 16th second comes, and what? Right? We work so hard for these accomplishments, but it doesn't maintain it. It doesn't define who we are. In fact, then we're just craving more and more of it, but we never feel fulfilled. Our identity is in something much greater than making a team, winning a game, passing an exam, or our job. The other thing that's interesting, historically, Western cultures promote accomplishing more, pushing harder, etc. But at the same time, there's a rise in adoption of Eastern cultural practices such as mindfulness, meditation, yoga, silent retreats. There is a hunger and thirst for slower, simpler pace, yet we can fall victim to the culture that is presented around us. How do we be intentional about walking a different path? So how do we become slower individuals? As I said, as a culture, so much of our identity is tied in what we do. It's tied to what we do instead of who we are. As we see so many benefits to investing in our character, our wellness, by taking time to rest, slow down, and therefore function more optimally. However, our environment is pushing the opposite. One strategy is practicing the presence. This was a term coined by Brother Lawrence, who wrote about experiencing a constant awareness of the divine in everyday life. So he would intentionally connect with God every day. I think the challenging thing that I'm finding in our environment is there's a lot of social noise. The noise is all around. And the challenging part about that is God's voice is there too, but sometimes it gets squeezed out because there's so much other noise. By intentionally trying to practice the presence every day, maybe in the morning, maybe dinner, evening, whatever, just to be mindful and trying to tune in can be really helpful to not get caught in the noise of our society, which is telling us what we should be doing. Anchor your attention. Focus on something immediate. Your breath, the feeling of your feet on the ground, the warmth of your morning coffee, or sounds around you. When your mind wanders, which it will, just return to the anchor without frustration. Doing ordinary things with full attention. How often is it, oh, I've got to do the dishes, I got to do this, I got to do all of that. But when we just do it with some intention, washing the dishes, going for a walk, drinking a coffee and enjoying the taste of the coffee, driving to work, and treat them as the main event, not something to be rushed through. Notice without judgment. Instead of labeling experiences good or bad, try observing them as they are. This builds clarity and calm. Pause throughout the day. Take short moments, 10 to 30 seconds throughout the day to check in. What am I feeling? What's happening right now? That one eye in, one eye out. What's going on around me? What's happening within me? Let thoughts pass through your brain. You don't have to stop thinking. Just let thoughts pass and come and go. Practice sitting in silence. There is so much noise all the time, and I think sitting in silence just reduces that cognitive overload so our brain can process thoughts more deeply. Research shows that quiet environments lower our cortisol levels and calms our nervous system. Even a few minutes of silence can slow the heart rate and the breathing. One of the things that I found really helpful recently is just being in the car without any music, without any radio, just silence. Letting my brain just relax. Because I think in order for us to have, well, the idea of things that wire together, fire together, if we're constantly under that state of input, and then we have difficulty trying to turn it off. So we have to create intentional times to be sitting in silence so that we can learn to wire that together so that when we need our brain to be quiet, maybe at nighttime, whenever it might be, that we've practiced it by intentionally just having some quiet. Most people would say that their best ideas come during quiet moments, whether it's in the shower, on a walk, or sitting alone. It allows the subconscious connections to come to the surface. It allows better listening. Right? We can be more present in our relationships and our conversations with our kids, with our partners, right? We're more likely to allow pauses in conversations when we're used to sitting comfortably in silence. Meditation and slow thinking allows problems to become clearer and helps good ideas come to the surface. One of the things that I've heard repeatedly, and I don't know if any of you are like this, but I've often wondered, probably just in the last couple of years, do I have ADD? Like, what's going on? Like, I'm feeling that idea of it's harder for me to focus and concentrate. As I sit at my desk at work, I've got my computer, there's messages that pop up there, my email, my phone, the other phone. And I feel like I'm always in scanning brain. What's going on? What's going on? What's going on? I've lost the ability to develop that focus brain. So by intentionally trying to focus on things particularly, we can start to build those back up. How to become a slower family. It takes time to build and connect authentically. As a family, I think it's important to intentionally connect and identify what the priorities are and work towards getting on the same page. This can be challenging too, I think, as parents. We have, what's important to one parent might not have been important to the other parent, and trying to clarify and narrow down what are those intentions for our family. If the dad loved playing hockey and the mom didn't, it's like, okay, what do we do with our kids, and what do we want to put them in, those types of things. So it can be really challenging to try and figure out what those extracurriculars might look like, right? Because they do have a lot of benefits. We know that there are some benefits to it, but trying to find the balance between giving our children opportunities versus the cost of overscheduling, which can result in that disconnection. So part of that conversation you need to know what is your capacity as an individual, as a couple, and as a family. And there's so many variables when we talk about capacity. Number of kids, how many parents are working, extended family support, the community in which you belong. So these are important conversations to have as a couple first, and then bring the kids into the conversation. What are their interests as well, right? One of the things we found really helpful is building our community. We're from a small town, we're from Baden, and so most of the kids had hockey friends within walking distance, so there was always carpooling and that sort of thing. So building community can be really, really helpful for trying to manage that as well. Make a commitment for a certain period of time. If it is a sport, it might be for a season, and then reevaluate. As parents, we often want to provide all the opportunities, but we often add new things in, but don't necessarily let some of the other things go. So we're trying to see kids maintain their sports, their music, their swimming, their youth group, and at the end of the season, they're just exhausted, right? So I think also as adults and as parents, we want to reflect, are we doing the things that we need to be doing to fill up our cup as well? Or are they getting squeezed out because our kids need us to drive them from here and there? And once again, as adults, I think we want to reevaluate too. What is my capacity in this season? Kelly talked about that today. This is a busy season for parents. And so knowing what your capacity is and able to commit to is really, really important. I think the other part of that is prioritizing your own mental health, right? As far as, am I sleeping well? Am I eating well? Am I connecting with my friends? Am I staying dehydrated? These are the things that help build our own capacity so that we've got the capacity to be present for our family. I often think about the example on the airplane, right? When they say with the oxygen masks, make sure you put it on yourself first before you put it on your child. You want to make sure you're looking after you in order to have capacity to help with your children. Setting daily intentions or weekly intentions. What do I want for this day? Just doing that check-in. What does this day look like? How do I want to be? How do I want to present? What are my priorities? How do I work through the noise and do what is true to me as an individual, as a parent or a child, as a Christian? Look for opportunities to authentically connect within our home, within our communities. We know that people live in a very isolated and alone culture right now, right? So being intentional, how do we connect with those around us? Ensure that there is unscheduled time for fun, playfulness, random family time. We don't want this to be leftover time. We want it to be planned, unscheduled time where we can practice being present. This presents opportunities for family members to compliment and validate each other just for who they are, not for what they've accomplished, not because they scored a goal or not because they won a game, but because the opportunity just presents it that they can be authentic in who they are, and just we can compliment them and engage in those conversations. Take time and savor your morning and evening routines, getting ready for school, getting ready for bed. These can be pretty challenging times, yet these are the moments when we are helping our children regulate their nervous system. How often are we telling our kids, hurry up, we gotta go, get in the car, it's time to leave. But actually we wanna be able to savor that time and create time so that we can just go into that more mindfully and present and pace ourselves during that time. One of the things that I love to do, listening to worship soaking music. Sometimes that's in the car, sometimes that's just I want to quiet my brain, but that can help to reset my nervous system as well. In addition, In addition to the early morning intentions, I think there's also evening reflections. How did the day go? Where did I show up for my kids? Where did I show up for myself? Where did I show up for my spouse? Right? Trying to do that gratitude at that point in the day. Looking at the things that went well from that perspective. How do we become the island of calm in the ocean of craziness? We are waiting for a shift in the environment, but maybe we need to be the ones to shift our own environment. Our homes, our workplaces, our communities. Jesus modeled it so well, and there's so many examples in the Bible in which he was able to be fully present to engage. John 4, Jesus is speaking to the woman at the well. He listens to her story and engages in meaningful conversation. He is completely present for her. In John 11, before raising Lazarus, Jesus wept with Mary and Martha. He could have easily just dismissed how they were feeling because he had a plan. He was going to raise Lazarus, but he entered into it with them. He was fully present. And Matthew 19, Jesus welcomes the children. He doesn't rush them along. He gives them the intention and embraces them. During the Last Supper, Jesus washes his disciples' feet and takes the time to prepare them for what is coming. Thinking of all the things that Jesus would need to do the night before his crucifixion, that's what happens. He's got time to wash people's feet. He's got time to just be present for people. And I haven't obviously, when I think about Jesus, I just have this sense that he spoke with slowness, with intention, with patience, right? And so when I think about my conversations with Jesus or my times of prayer, I just feel held. And I'm curious if you know of someone in your life, or if you've ever encountered someone in your life who, when you speak with them, there's an element of gentleness and you just feel held. It appears that there is nowhere else that they would rather be. I have a friend like this, and it is so refreshing. One of the things that I learned from him recently is changing our dialogue from I have to I get to. I have to go to work to I get to go to work. I have to put the kids to bed to I get to put the kids to bed. I have to make dinner to I get to make dinner. It changes our whole mind shift, and it changes our intention with how we show up in those relationships with our kids, with our spouse, with our families. Right? We are creatures of habit. These kind of strategies take time to build, right? When we think about going in with slowness, when we think about using the language I get to, it's going to take some time. Those that wire together, fire together. So the more we practice it, it will change our neural pathways so that we can then try and be a little bit slower as we move forward. It feels uncomfortable, however, the more you do it, the easier it gets. When I think about the season of raising our families, like I said, it's one of the busiest seasons, and I think there's so much of what should I be doing? How do I go through this? One of the things I would encourage is just pick one entry point. Start with one area. It could be, I'm going to be more intentional with my morning routine, making time for myself. It could be, I'm going to prioritize the bedtime routine and just make time to be with the kids. It could be, as a family, we want to make a meal together, and every Wednesday is blah, 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 and that's our time together. It is maybe connecting with our spouse and thinking about, let's reset our priorities. What does that look like? So that's my suggestion, or my kind of idea is, how do we pick one entry point? I just wanted to highlight a couple of resources that might be helpful. In Praise of Slow, that was a phenomenal book that I read recently, Challenging the Cult of Speed. It really talked about some of the things that, the benefits of a slower lifestyle, not only, but more so in achieving the things that we're trying to achieve by doing all the things that we're doing, but by going slower, we actually accomplish more. Atomic Habits, James Clear. Changing habits is really, really hard. And phenomenal book. I don't know if anyone is familiar with that one. Self-Compassion by Kristen Neff. Self-compassion, I think as parents, we are often really, really hard on ourselves. We feel bad for when we've gotten upset with the kids. We tend to carry this sense of shame and self-blame. So it talks about being more self-compassionate. And the last one I put on there is how to break up with your phone. I think that's one of those things that sometimes we're struggling with, sometimes more than we realize, but I just thought I would throw that one in there as well. So thank you everyone for coming. I hope there was something helpful, a nugget of something along the way that was helpful. And any questions?